Hey everybody, back with another Sencore video here. I've had my CR7000 for quite a while and I've done many videos with it. It is probably the best tube restorer out there. But I figured what I would do is I was able to pick up some additional Sencore CR tube restorers, and I would do a review and fix or repair on each one of them. So we got the Sencore 143 and the 161, and then the Big Mac universal tester, which is, I can't remember the name, I think it's like a 168 or something like that, I'm not sure. I'll look up the number, but this thing's definitely bigger than the other two. So we're going to start with the Sencore CR143, which is the oldest and not very likely useful for a lot of arcade stuff unless you want to build some adapters and maybe do some manual gun switching. I'm going to go into that in a second. I've never used this one before. We're going to do it together, open it up, investigate, learn about it right here in this video. Alright, so this is the CR143. And we open it up. A couple points about this. Here's the manual here, or the setup chart. I don't actually have the manual, but I did have somebody take some pictures of the manual. So this CR143 CRT Champion, I think they came out with this in 1967. So a lot of the connectors and capabilities are not for 1980 color CRTs. A lot of black and white TVs, as well as some color, but not a ton of them. So here's some of the connections. It has a amp. I think this is a 86CP 11 connector that you plug into. So the adapters are quite unique, I guess. And you can see, like, here's the cable, and then you plug in your connector, if I can line it up correctly. There we go. And then you would connect one of these sockets onto your tube. And so you actually, we need to actually create our own socket to work with, or some type of universal adapter to work with arcade tubes. So I actually acquired some of these amp connectors. They're not cheap. They're probably around at least $20 to $30. So you definitely don't want to buy a whole bunch of them. You want to be able to do something similar to this, where you can have multiple sockets hanging off one adapter, and even a universal. So that's my plan. I have some CR23 sockets that I could wire up, but also just wire up something with mini grabbers like this, so we can actually make our own universal adapter. Alright, so if we see here, let me try to move this up a little bit. We're going to go through and test all this, but you have a G1 bias setting, negative bias. You have emissions, short checks. Your shorts are through these two neon bulbs here. You have a reju function, pressed emissions, life test. You can a gun selector, so you can do red, green, or blue, and you can set the G2 voltage independently for each gun. Now that's actually kind of weird a little bit, because I think most arcade monitors, the G2 is all tied together. There's not a separate G2 for green and red and blue. It's all the same G2, and you have separate Ks. And I'm going to show you that here in a second. We're going to pull this back and look at the wires and how the adapter is actually wired up. Alright, so I have the connector pulled back a little bit so we can see it. Hopefully it focuses. And with the notch at the top, we go clockwise, 1, 2, 3, like this. So 1 is F1, and then 2 is RK, and then 3 is supposed to be GK, but there is no GK coming from the CR143, so there is no separate, and I kind of made a little cheat sheet here. Somebody else had done the mapping of the amp plug to the CR23 socket, and you can see that 1, RK, then GK, there's nothing. So we can't actually map GK over. And then 4, 5, and 6 are basically, let's see, where's 4? 4 is right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay. 4, here we go. 4, 5, and 6 are our red G2, our green G2, and our blue G2, and then 7 is supposed to be blue K, but we don't have that. So for to test a CR23 socket, which is like a normal, G07, K4900, 4600, etc., you're going to have, or K7000 fat neck, you're going to tie G2, G2, BG2 all together, and that would be your G2 voltage. The problem is we only have 1K. So we're going to see if we can actually use this with a universal adapter and only use red guns. We'll just have to move, our RK to GK and to BK when we're testing those guns. So we'll have to test the guns individually, but I suspect we should still be able to test all these. And then again, our G1, there's separate G1 voltages for each gun coming from the CR143, as you can see here. 8, 9, and 10 is RG1, GG1, BG1, but those are typically all tied together when you're going to a CR23 socket, as an example. And let's see. And then 11 is F2, which is your filament voltage. So let me let's get testing this. I want to actually put this on a meter and do some tests. There's verify. I might crack it open and clean it up some, and there's a way to calibrate. You shouldn't have to calibrate our settings, but there's a way to test this filament voltage, and I'll go through the testing sequence as well. Alright, we're just disassembling this here real quick. So there's a couple screws right here on the back side of it that we undo. And then we'll flip it back around. Let's see if I can. And then there's 2 screws up here. This thing's kind of feels a little gross. I mean, it needs to be cleaned. And I also just want to get the whole unit out of there. Out of its case. And this is what the inside looks like. So it's really a meter right there. A big filtering capacitor that we want to double check before we touch it. A transformer with a rotary switch that's selecting different voltages. Obviously some knobs and stuff, so it is really quite mechanical. There is not a lot of, it's basically a capacitor and a transformer and then a bunch of switches and resistors, as you can see here. There's very few capacitors. There's only basically this one, 1, 2, 3. And this is a 450 volt capacitor, 120 microfarad or something. So we'll test that as well. But very, very easy there. And I bet this is one of the adjusters that we can adjust inside there. Sorry. These 2 right here are probably a couple of adjusters that are set at the factory, so you shouldn't have to adjust them, but we'll double check that. Interesting. So I'm going to clean the inside of this real quick. and then come back. Alright, this cover just comes off. The hinges are just like these little pegs right there, which is kind of nice, and I cleaned that. Feels a little bit better, but still kind of like sticky or something. It might be the texture. But I also wanted to show that this says $129.50. I don't know when. That looks like it's pretty old. But I only paid probably like 25 bucks for this thing. I don't think it was off of eBay. I'm pretty sure it was like 25 bucks. So I just wanted to show that sticker before I cleaned it. Alright, so one of the things I was doing is thinking about whether I wanted to build an adapter or not. And so I took off the existing cover or shield for the existing adapters that Sencore already made. Now this is the black and white one, and you can see, let me see here, pin 1 is pin 1, and then pin 11 is your filament voltage. And then you have RK, and then you're supposed to have GK, but again 143 doesn't have it. And then you get to RG2, green G2, blue G2, etc. So this adapter here, and these, you know, it says here color special. Let me see here. Does that even have all of them? It has purple, yellow, brown. I'd have to double check that. Well, it's kind of loose. That says color special. I'm not sure what tube that would actually go to. And then I looked at this one here, and if you can see here, basically this one just already has 4, 5, and 6 tied together, and 8, 9, and 10 tied together. So you really only need five pins or 5 cables, 5 wires, whatever you want to call it. So you have your filament voltage, then you have your RK, which is yellow in this case, and then all of your G2s are tied together, and all of your G1s are tied together, and that equals 5. So what I was thinking of doing is just cutting off here and then branching from these wires, basically some mini clips that I just cut in half because I'm lazy. Just cut some mini clips in half, and then I'll have my 5 wires. As an example, this is from my CR7000, the universal hookup or adapter. For my CR7000, you have, you know, GK, BK for blue, and RK, right? And so if you just take out the 2 that the CR143 doesn't have, you end up with these 5, right? RK, filament voltage, and then G1 and G2. So that's what I think I'm going to do. Rather than waste one of these $20 ones, I'm just going to go into here, snip this one off, and then splice in some mini cables and be done with it. Alright, so I did wire this up here, and honestly I should have probably just cut off this, whatever this adapter was right here, and just wired my leads on there. But that's alright, whatever. It came out okay. I had to use electrical tape because it was so short for me to splice it in there. I couldn't even get some heat shrink tubing on there. So basically what I got here is I have RK, so just 1K, and then I have F1 is black, F2 is yellow, then I have G2 is blue, and G1 is green. So I have 5 connections, and this should allow us to test. Now granted, we can't simultaneously test all 3 guns, but we can test 1 gun at a time with this setup and with the CR143. So let me put this back on there. Alright, so the next thing I was going to do is show basically when you're looking at this connector, right here. Now it goes counterclockwise when you're looking at it this way. So this is pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Alright, and what we're going to do is we're going to get our meter here. Actually, I'll put it right there. Alright, there we go. And we're going to power on our tester. Now, I'm going to do, I have to order some parts actually to do the full adjustment and stuff, because you need a specific kind of resistor. But the first thing I'm going to do is just see if I can get heater voltage, basically test if the device, the CR143, is actually working and putting out some, at close enough voltage levels. So I'm going to put in pin 1 and pin 11 should be AC. There we go. And I'm going to turn on our function switch to line adjust. And you can see I have about 7.3 volts AC, and I'm on, you can't really see it, but I'm on voltage for filament volts, so that's heater voltage. I'm on number 6. Now if I go to 5, it goes to 5.9, and you can adjust it with this line adjust right there. So you're supposed to adjust it into the line adjust line right there. But there's this line adjust pot right here, or adjuster, variable resistor or something. So you're supposed to put it into that line adjust line right there. Hopefully you can see that okay. Oh dang it, I'm almost out of battery. Alright, so let me just go through and make sure that our filament volts is working, because this is going through different sections of the transformer. So we're at 1.14 volts, 2.7, 3.1, 4.6, 5.8, and then we're at 7.3 with no load obviously on it. And then 8.13 at the 7 mark. At the 8 mark we're at 9.3, 9 we're at 10 volts, 10 we're at 11.2, and 12 volts we're at 13.3. So it's definitely off a little bit, and I'm going to go through a better adjustment with a resistor here in a second. But let me charge my thing and come back. Okay, so I'm back. I got a little bit of battery here. So we tested our heater voltage, which was on 1 and 11. So now we're going to go reference to cathode. So our ground lead is going to go to K, RK. And then we're going to go to G2. Let's go pin 4, which is red GK. We're going to go to emissions. And we're going to change this to DC. Alright. Am I on emissions? No, I was on shorts. Alright, so now we're on emissions. We're on, our color gun is red. And we're going to adjust our G2 screen voltage here. Now, all the way down to the left, 25 volts. We're reading about 22 volts. And then at 100, we're like at 64. At 200, we're at like 133. 300, 263. And then all the way maxed out, it's supposed to be 325, but we're reading 295 or so. So we're going to change that to be our green cathode. Whoops. Keep that in pin 2. Because there's only one cathode, and we're going to go to pin 4. Am I right? Yeah, G2. Let's go to green gun. Alright, what am I doing wrong here? I had this working before. G2, pin 4. Oh, I need to go to pin 5. Duh. Pin 5. Pin 5. And now I move my color gun to green. All the way counterclockwise. G2 voltage. supposed to be 25, we're at 21. At 50, we're at 30. At 100, we're at 84. At 200, we're at like 182. 300, 276. And then all the way maxed out, it's about 300 volts. So it is a little bit off. And now if we go to pin 6, right here, go to our blue gun, we're at 21 volts. At 50, we're at about 30. At 100, we're at 84 maybe. 200, 300 is actually pretty close. And all the way maxed out is 294. So all of them all the way maxed out. Let's just do that. All of them are, G2 is maxed out all the way. We're at 294 on green. On blue. On green, we're at 291. And on red, G2, we're at 290. So about a volt difference. And now we just tested basically our G2 voltage. Now, the only thing is when we're using this, we're only going to be using the red gun. But I'm testing it, all the voltages. So now let's go to, with our meter in pin 2, our reference ground on pin 2, we're going to go and test our G1 bias, which is pin 8. That's 7, that's pin, no, that's 6. That's pin 8 right there. We are at, and this is our negative G1 bias right there. Alright, so we're at, again, references on K. There's only one K on the CR143. We got in pin 8, go to 0, we're at negative, basically no voltage. At 10, negative 3, at 20, negative 13, negative 23 at 40, negative 35 at 50, we're at negative 45, 60, we're at negative 57, and it's okay if these aren't exact. I'm going to try to adjust it and see if we can get it exact, but I don't think I will be able to. Negative 68 at 70, that's pretty close. Negative 77 at 80. Negative 90 at 90. And it maxes out at negative 90. So that's our negative G1 bias setting. Now the other thing you can do is if we hit our emissions test over here on the far right, I expect our negative G1 bias to go down to 0. Let's see if that's the case. Yes, it does. So that's something you can do too, is if you hit emissions, basically it's taking the negative G1 bias all the way down to 0 relative to K. And so that the guns are fully emitting, which would be a full white screen. So my emissions button is working. My color guns don't have any impact on this at all. For red, well actually it does. Why does it have a difference? Oh, because I have different negative G1 bias. So let's go to pin 9, would be green. To make sure that it adjusts. It does. Alright, and let's go to blue, which is pin 10. As you can see down here, blue is pin 10. Negative 91 volts. Hit the emissions test and it goes down to 0. So all of our functions are actually working. The voltage is a little off. But all of our functions are working. I have not messed with color tracking. I haven't figured that out. But as far as voltage goes, everything's working. Let me come back. The way you're supposed to test to adjust this is you need it says a 5.7 ohm resistor. I have a 5 ohm resistor. We're going to put a 5 ohm resistor on the heater lines and do our line adjustment and see what it tests at. But I have some 5.7 ohms on order, so let me come right back. Alright, so I hooked up my little adapter with my universal hookups there, and I have a 5 ohm 100 watt resistor. Now it's supposed to be 5.7 ohms, but close enough. And I could probably take this off and do the adjustment with the 5 ohm, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wait to do the 5.7. So I'm set up for, I need to go to AC volts, and we're going to, if I can do this without screwing stuff up, we're going to change this to, let's see if I can go up a little higher, and then zoom it, and there we go. Alright, so we're going to go to line adjust. Alright, and we're going to measure our voltage. There we go. Right here. And we have 3.7 volts. And we're set at 5. So let's go to 6. And across the resistor, we should have around 6.3 volts when we adjust it into the line adjust line right here. So we're going to adjust it to the line adjust line, just like that. And we have 6.9 volts. And so I know, the heater voltage is slightly high, because when you turn it to 6, it's supposed to be 6.3. When we go to the line adjust, it's supposed to be at 6.3 volts. And we are at 6.9. I'm about to hook it up to a tube, so let me actually unhook this and do this adjustment real quick. Even with a 5, I know it's supposed to be 5.7, but I'm going to do the adjustment with a 5 ohm resistor. Okay, so hopefully you can see this on here. So this is the line adjust resistor that we're going to mess with. I don't know what this one is, but I think this is it. I haven't experimented. We're doing it together. So what we want to do is we're going to turn our knob to line adjust, and we have our voltage on 6. Let's see here, what do we get on our meter here? 6.7. So we want to, shouldn't do this with a metal screwdriver, but let's turn this down some. Because I have my meter, actually, I'm going to adjust it so my meter is on the line adjust. I know you can barely see it from that angle. That's 6.4. Oh, 6.4. We want to go back the other way. We want 6.3. We want this to read 6.3. Still says 6.4. Okay, maybe, is this having no impact? I have no idea. Okay. Okay, 6.0. I'm probably doing this wrong. Because as I turn that up, I think my line adjusts. Which one am I supposed to do first? Oh boy. I might have to go back and read the directions again. Am I supposed to adjust the line adjust first and then this thing? Or is it just like kind of back and forth? Alright, there's 6.3. Alright, 6.3, and My line adjust is on the the correct line, and my voltage is 6.3, so that's where we want it. Now I could try adjusting it just a hair down. But again, this isn't a 5.7 ohm resistor. There we go. Alright, whatever. You get the idea. Basically want to adjust that and your line adjust. So it reads 6.3 with a 5.7 ohm resistor here. And I don't know how much better we're going to get. So that's probably pretty good there. Alright, I got it back in. We're going to put our meter, let's see here, pins 1 and 11. And we're on AC volts. Go to line adjust, and at 6 it reads 7.23 volts or 7.2 volts, but realize that this is without any resistance or load on it at all. So at 5 we're at like 5.7. At 1 we're at 1.1. And that's I can't even adjust my line adjust anymore. So I think we're better off. I'll come back at the end of the video when I get some resistors and do the adjustments. But I am going to put it on a tube real quick just to show you kind of like how to test it with just one gun.